Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 209. Today I'm going to talk about Global Mogul. This is a new release from Mayfair Games, and I will just read you this little blurb in the box that I find somewhat humorous. So it says, Global Mogul is a limited action, worker placement, resource acquisition, and opportunity management game. Okay, so that kind of describes the game. It is a heavy economic game. As far as heaviness, I don't know where I could really put it. I have a hard time sort of gauging, what your grasp of a game might be, but I find it a little bit on the heavier side. It's not the heaviest game I've ever played, but it is relatively heavy. It's got some interesting mechanisms in it, nice treatment of those. It does play 1 to 4 players. I haven't played it solitaire. I just frankly don't have the interest to do it, so I can't speak to that. But it does play well with 3 and 4 players. And well, let me just jump into how it works, and then I will tell you what I think about it. Okay, so I have the game set up here, and as you can see, there's just a lot of pieces. Now you're gonna have a bunch of cards, okay, and you've got market cards here. And I have laid this out a little bit differently than how the rulebook describes, and you basically just lay it out however the table space is going to work for you. So let's call this top row of markets here our open markets, and then our bottom row here emerging markets here. So you're going to be dealing with these cards quite a bit. And then you've got 2 rows of contracts here. You can see the white back here is your sort of private contracts, and then you've got your red backs here, and these are your government contracts. They operate pretty much the same, but when you take a government contract, you actually will get a little bit of a stipend, sort of like this little stimulus, if you will, of money before you actually complete the contract. And then way up at the top here, we have these horizontal cards there, and those are companies that you can buy and sort of invest in. Now you've also got a market mat here. Now there are different mats for different player counts here. So you got a standard display for 2 players, and then on the back you have sort of the base game display. I'm just going to cover mostly just the standard game. I would say definitely the standard game is the better way to play this. The basic game, there's nothing wrong with it, but the game definitely takes on a couple little interesting, nuances, for lack of a better word, with the standard game. So a couple things to notice here, mainly is this market area here. So you can see you can buy some of these resources or goods, if you will. So this is sort of a labor worker here, and this is wood, basically industrial products. Oil, and then you've got sort of your white collar workers here, your tech workers, if you will, and then you have technology, which is represented by these laptops, and then gold. So as you buy these, you're going to get them sort of at a discount for the first however many. So you can see this says discount times 3. So the first 3 of these you can buy for $10, and then the price is going to go up to 20. And that also affects how much you can actually sell the goods. So if you wanted to sell back some workers back to the game, then you basically get half the amount of whatever the current price is. A couple other things to notice here, you've got a venture capital space here, which I'll talk a little bit more detail, but the way this space operates is you put this guy here, you take the venture capital action, you'll get that much money, and then the next person to go will possibly take the venture capital and they'll get $20, and then it goes up, and basically one spot is allowed to have 1 cube of a color. And then once you get down to 80, then anybody can take this. Now you can pay this back at a cost of $10, plus whatever you're at. So it's possible to do something like this as well. So let's say you took the venture capital action and then you wanted $50. You could actually, in that action, also get rid of some of these, because you're going to score points for having the least amount of cubes here. So you could do this to get 50, and so you can pull these off for 50 plus 10 for each of those, so 70. So you could, in fact, do this and then just only pay 20, basically removing cubes, and now you've only got 1 cube or less cubes than that. So it's an interesting way that works. So you've got a turn track. Each game's going to last 6 turns. And then there's a little market research action that you can do to sort of manipulate turn order. This is going to be important a little bit in the game, mostly for grabbing contracts and companies, sort of getting first stab at those. The way that the game normally works is you just pass this first player token around the board, but then you can jump in to be first on the next turn. So no matter where this is at, you're going to get the first action, and then it's going to operate in turn order based on where this is at. Or you can choose to go last, and that is going to be important in the very last turn of the game. Maybe the second to last, but especially the very last turn of the game. I'll explain that in a second. So there's a little bit of manipulation you can do here, and this is to keep track of who maybe is going first and last. in the upcoming turn. So here we've got the player mat here, and this is actually pretty informative. You've got all of the available actions here, all the victory points that you're going to get, and also some of the end game things. You're going to put your money and then your agents, which are these cubes here in this spot, and then also possibly any resources. You'll start off with a couple of resources, a labor worker, a wood, and then depending on if you're playing basic or advanced, your choice of resource or the game dictates to you the resources. And then over on the side here you can see you're usually going to have a couple extra agents. I believe it's 9. Yeah, it's 9 with this one here. So you have 9 agents over here that aren't quite available, and you're going to want to be taking certain actions like market research, for example, to get these into your general supply so you can actually use them. And these agents are going to be used out on different cards, and like I showed you here on the venture capital. So you are going to use them up, and then towards the end of the game be wanting to get extra agents there. The main focus of the game is going to be these 2 columns here. So you start off the game with these 3 action discs if you're playing the standard game, again, which I recommend. And then you can activate and make available these 3 discs if you do a couple of different things. So the first time that you complete a private contract, you'll be able to use this guy. First time you complete a government contract, you'll be able to activate that agent. And then once you have a guy, an agent on the different types of market cards, you'll be able to activate this guy. And I'll explain the market cards in a second. But basically you start with 3 agents, and then through the progress of the game, you'll be able to get more and then do more things. So on your turn, you're basically going to take an agent here and then choose one of these actions here. So you are limited to doing each action once per turn, so you can't, stack discs like that. And that is sort of a big, part of the game, sort of the order of operations. You might do some things this turn and then, be planning to do things on the later turn. So that's something that you're definitely going to have to consider as the game progresses, is what you're going to do on the different turns. Now this spot here, you can see you've got representations of all the different goods. And I'll explain how to do this in a second, but what this spot is for is, let's say I get to the point where I'm producing, 1 labor worker and then maybe 2 technology or white collar workers. This is going to track what you're able to produce. Now you have to take an actual produce action. You're not just going to produce them naturally. You've got to physically sort of take that action. But this is going to keep track of all the things that you're currently able to produce. So when you take the produce action, you basically just count all that up and then you grab the number of resources indicated. So let's try to quickly walk through all of these different actions here. So you can see we've got these 2 globes here, and these are going to allow us to basically invest in either open markets or emerging sort of future markets. So the first one is for investing in open markets, the second one is for emerging markets. So here, just for edification, let's say I put the open markets on top and the emerging markets on the bottom. If we took the open market action, we can then take and purchase sort of slots in these different markets with our agents. So you can see here we've got the cost. So let's say we paid $40, and then we could put 2 of our agents on the card there. And so that means we're going to actually increase the production here, which I just showed you earlier. So now we would flip that up. Let's say we did that. Now we're at 2 of the labor workers, and then because we have invested here in this market, so this is going to directly increase our production capability. So you can see here, you can get a cheaper guy here in Egypt for 10, and then the next one's 20, and then $20 for the wood there. So the production's only going to increase immediately when you invest in an open market. When you invest, let's say down here in the emerging markets, this is going to increase your production on the next turn. So any of these that are down here that have a cube in them, let's just put some cubes out here. Maybe the red player likes some oil. Any that have cubes in them are going to move up into the open market area. So let's just move this aside for space reasons. And so on the next turn, now we're going to increase our production in all of these different types here because now they're open. Anything without a cube is going to stay down here. If for some reason none of these get a cube, then you're just going to discard all of them. And then with all of these different stacks of cards, we're going to replenish from the deck. And the decks do have an A and B type of idea. Some of these have an A/B, so you have a bunch of A's, and then they have a bunch of B's, and you take the A/B's. Let's see if I can find some here. Here we can see an example of these contracts here. This is A/B. So you take a certain number of these, shuffle them in the A, and a certain number of these, and shuffle them into the B. So it's kind of an ABC, but it's a little bit different there. Now the other thing that you're considering here is sort of an area control. Now let's zoom in just a little bit here. We can see that we have these are in the same region here. So you can see this is Asia, or excuse me, Africa and the Middle East, and then these are in the Americas here. And these are color coded. So this is going to be important here to sort of getting area control based on these regions here. So once you have 2 cubes, let's say we have 2 cubes on Brazil, we're the only ones there, then we basically have control of it. So we're going to use some extra discs that we have in our supply and go ahead and mark that. So now we've got 3 victory points. And now that's not scored until the end of the game, and this is going to change. So if somebody else comes in here with more cubes, which wouldn't be possible here because we've only got 2, then the control can change. But let's say, for argument's sake, that we do get 2 red cubes here. So now we've got a tie. How do we break the tie? Well, normally what you're going to do is you're going to take and look at the other markets that are in that same region, in that same color, and then whoever has the most cubes in the total region is going to get control of this one. So let's say we're looking at Brazil's control. We'll say, okay, Brazil, they're tied. Okay, we do have one other region available here, and then blue's also got 1 cube and red doesn't have any. So blue is going to get control of that particular area there. Now there's a whole sort of cascading list of tiebreakers basically. So if you're tied here, then it's whoever has the rightmost. The other thing that you can do is you can also do an access investment here. So let's say this is full and you already have some cubes in there, then you can go in here basically for 20 bucks, add this, and the only thing that's really going to do for you is try to get you area majority in the different markets. Now you also have to consider control of the entire region, and that is marked by putting a little disc sort of above those region cards. So when you move these around, you want to kind of keep them all sort of grouped together by region. And when you do consider control, you also are considering anything that is in emerging territory, and that's very important in the last game because obviously in the last turn, these guys here are not going to move up on the last turn, but they are going to be used when scoring that area majority. Again, these points are at the end of the game. So there's a kind of a lot going on here. They're going to produce resources for you. You're going to get a ton of points, or you should at least, from having area majority not only in the specific markets, but again in the regions as a whole. And some of the bigger markets here, like we can see China here, have a first, a second, and then as long as you have presence in here, you can put a little disc there, just the fact that you have a cube there. So that's the first 2 spots here, open and emerging markets. The second is grabbing either a private contract or a government contract. So let's take a look at some of these contract cards. Now I didn't bother shuffling the decks in order, so I've got some A, Bs, and Bs and things. So depending on whether you're going base game or standard game, and if you're looking at government versus private contracts, you may auction. So if you're playing standard, you can auction for the government contracts and also for the companies as well. But for all intents and purposes, you're just going to take these contracts here. And then you can see you've got a spot for a cube. So you've got to basically place this and hold this until you're able to satisfy all of the requirements here. So you're going to be down a cube, which isn't too bad at the beginning of the game, but towards the end of the game, it does come into play a little bit. But this basically is the requirement. You need 2 industrial workers, 3 pieces of wood, and then you get the payout there. Now the other difference, besides possibly auctioning these government contracts, is they are going to give you $10 of their payout amount. So if you take this, you're going to take $10 right away, and then when you get it, you're going to get the remainder there. So you can see there's some different requirements here, and different varieties and types of things that you're going to go for. Now these are going to disappear at the end of the round. But these are going to be a large way to score points as well as get money, because you can see some of these ones here will give you 5 points, but a little bit smaller of a payout. And this one, this one gives you a little bit more of a payout versus the points. So you're going to have to kind of weigh that as the game sort of progresses through the turns, what kind of contracts you want. And again, they are ordered to make them feasible, in the early, middle, and late game. So those are the contract spaces. And again, as soon as you complete a private contract and then a government contract, you're going to unlock the last disc here. Now this last one here, you're going to get once you have a cube basically in each of the 4 different regions. Okay, so we've got the red region, the green region and stuff. So once you have a cube in each of those, doesn't matter if you have control or anything, then you're going to unlock that last piece. So the next spot here is for getting a company. And so you can see we've got 3 companies here. Again, the number of cards you deal out is based on the number of players. And you can also auction for the companies here. You're going to pay this amount here, and then you've also got to put a cube in here sort of to operate it, if you will. And boy, there's a ton of effects here, and they really are sort of game changing and definitely worth investing. This is the kind of thing that you want to go first for. I mean, sometimes there'll be a nice contract out, but you can kind of tell what people are producing. So that's not so much as in play. It is a little bit in play, but the companies are definitely, there's going to be good ones out there that people are going to really want. So you may want to go first for that. And these have a whole different types of things. Some you'll be able to use once per turn. Some are sort of a persistent effect. There's just, I mean, there's a nice stack of cards here. The next space here is the production. So if we took the production action, basically we would just produce whatever we've lined up. So we'd get 2, 2, and 3 of those things there. And the next spot is the venture capital, which I sort of talked about at the beginning. You can see there, this is the venture capital spot. Again, the cubes sort of stack up. And then when you take that action, you can also pay off any of your remaining cubes that are on there. And you're going to get points again at the end of the game. Whoever has the least amount of cubes here is going to get some extra bonus points. And here we can go to the resource market. So again, the resource market here, first you can sell up to 5 goods, and then you can buy up to 5 goods. And this is an interesting part of the game. I'll talk more about it in my conclusion, but you're not really going to go here a whole lot in the beginning of the game, but you're probably going to go here quite a bit at the end of the game. So that's an interesting way that the game sort of starts off sort of slow. The game actually plays quicker at the beginning, but you kind of, you don't feel like you're doing a whole ton. And then at the end of the game, you're doing a lot, and then the game kind of slows down a little bit. So these last 2 spaces are sort of interesting. This one is basically you get a government grant, you get $10, and then you can add one of your agents here from the side over to your general supply. And the other thing you can do is that market research like I was talking about. This one, you can take 2 agents from your supply, from your general supply and add it to your main supply, or you can take 1 agent and then you can either choose to go first next turn or last next turn. So this is that little turn order manipulation. You can either get 2 agents or do 1 agent and then either of those. Then like I said, you're going to play 6 rounds and then you're going to have some endgame scoring, and it's probably better if I just read this to you because I will forget something. So again, you've got the markets, you got the total victory points for having, the spots that you control on each of the markets, and then you're going to get secondary control and things like that, presence. Private contracts, again, all the contracts, the government and private contracts are going to give you points. The companies actually come with victory points. I didn't mention that before. Every $50 is a point. And then you're going to get all kinds of bonuses here. So the region control, you're going to get 3 points. Remember, if you have the most control in all of the cards of that particular color here. So again, we have the green ones there. If you have control of that region, you get points. And then if you control the region with the most markets, then you're going to get 3 points. So whatever the biggest region is, somebody's going to get points for that. And then also the most private and government contracts completed is going to get points. But if you have a contract that's outstanding, you're not going to be in the running for that. So even if you have the most completed and you still have one kind of left hanging, then you're out of the running for most contracts. And then the most different types of companies, each of the companies is going to have a type, sort of like procurement, different things like that. And then the fewest venture capital agents, again, over here on the main board. Okay, hope you enjoyed the overview. First obvious thing is it definitely feels like I'm playing a prototype when I play this game. Not a big deal for me. The cards are flimsy. You got cards everywhere. You got discs everywhere. Marking region control and area control and all kinds of chits everywhere. If you're a component file, it may not be a game for you. But to me, I don't mind it with this kind of game. So getting to the things that I like, and I kind of alluded to this in the walkthrough, was that sort of growth of your engine over time. Now, a lot of times with a Euro game, and this isn't necessarily a Euro game, it's a little Euro-y, but it's more economic-y than abstracted Euro-y. A lot of times with those, you kind of get your engine going and then boom, the game's over. This is one of those where you get your engine going and you're able to put it to use, which is cool because I don't mind those games where you kind of get cut off at the knees. But I do like these kind of games also where you get to kind of do some stuff. So like I said before, the beginning of the game is going to start off sort of slow. The turns are going to go quickly, especially the first 3 turns. But then you're not going to be doing a whole lot. You won't be able to really buy much from the market and stuff. So you got to complete some contracts, take some venture capital, get kind of your money flowing. And then you start to be able to do a lot of stuff at the end. In terms of the number of contracts that you can complete and then, putting companies to good use. So I really like how the game grows with you as you play. The other thing is at the end of the game, the turn order, when you're going last in that last round, that's going to be pretty important. because you can kind of go in and sort of ninja those areas for the area control on the markets. So, that might be a little off-putting. It is a little bit unsettling to me, but it's something that, once you're kind of aware that it's going to happen, then you've got to really weigh that sort of balance and that payoff for going and getting those, an extra set of points from the area control, because you are going to get a good chunk of your points from the area control, but you're also going to get a really good chunk of points from the market contracts, and the private and the government contracts, not the market contracts. So that's an interesting sort of gamey, thing that's kind of thrown in at the end. But yeah, it's a very interesting, neat, kind of heavy, chunky economic game with not so great components. So if it looks like an interesting game, if you like games like Power Grid or train games and stuff like that, I think you'll probably will enjoy this. And I like the emerging versus the open markets. It's different things like that. I like how the venture capital works. There's just a nice lot of interesting sort of, a mechanism. So I just wanted to reread to you the back of the box thing again. So Global Mogul is a limited action, worker placement, resource acquisition, and opportunity management game. That kind of sums it up. Now, the key part of that is the limited action thing. So you can only take the one action the one time on your turn, and you really want to get those extra discs unlocked too. So that really kind of makes the game really Euro-y to me. It's kind of worker placement on your own board, and you can only do the one thing the one time. There's a lot of times you want to do the same thing twice in a turn, but you just can't. So you've got to really work around that, and that keeps the game very restrictive in a way, but also makes it, it makes it fun. So anyway, that's Global Mogul. Definitely take a look at it. Thanks.